There's a kind of noise that doesn't come through your ears, it comes from within. It's the noise that starts when you stay somewhere you no longer belong. A draining conversation, a relationship that consumes you, an environment where you have to try too hard just to be accepted. You leave feeling heavier than when you arrived, yet somehow, you return. Because we were taught that staying is a virtue, that leaving is giving up, that walking away is a sign of weakness. So you stay. And you silence that discomfort with excuses like, it's not that bad, or better this than being alone. But with each return you lose a bit of your energy, a little of your clarity, and slowly yourself. It's strange, when someone hurts us, we think of reacting right away. But when a place, a routine, a relationship wears us down day after day, the reaction is different. We endure. We adapt. We convince ourselves that enduring is the same as being strong. But enduring what destroys you isn't strength. It's disconnection from yourself. And that's where the problem begins. We confuse loyalty with imprisonment. We mistake resistance for self-sabotage. And we forget one of the greatest powers a person can have. The courage to walk away. Not to run away, but to breathe. To find yourself again. To remember that there's life and peace beyond the noise. In Stoic philosophy, walking away is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of clarity. It's the quiet act of someone who has understood that not everything deserves their presence. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, didn't begin his journey surrounded by prestige. He lost everything in a shipwreck, and it was in that loss, in the forced distance from the life he knew, that he found philosophy. Seneca, even within Nero's court, withdrew inwardly. He knew that being physically present didn't mean handing over his mind to the chaos of power. Epictetus, once a slave even after gaining freedom, chose to live simply, far from the centers of influence. And Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, wrote in secret. His retreat was inward. He mentally distanced himself from the vanity of the empire to remember who he really was. These men didn't withdraw to disappear. They withdrew to preserve what mattered. And that's the lesson. Walking away wisely is choosing where your soul can breathe. It's understanding that there are environments that drain your virtue, relationships that undermine your integrity, situations that pull you away from your philosophy. The Stoic doesn't run away. He simply knows when it's time to go. And when he leaves, he carries no resentment, only awareness. The decision to walk away, when done consciously, is guided by the 4 Stoic virtues. And each one brings light to this quiet yet powerful path. The first is wisdom. It's the beacon that lets you see clearly. It's the inner voice that says, this is no longer your place. Wisdom isn't haste. It's a refined sense of the right time to stay, and the right time to leave. When you begin to lose yourself trying to fit in, trying to please, trying to uphold a presence that no longer makes sense, wisdom whispers, you don't need this anymore. The second is courage. Because sometimes, leaving takes more strength than staying. Staying is familiar. Leaving means facing the unknown. It means dealing with temporary loneliness. It means hearing judgment from those who don't understand. But the Stoic knows, honest silence is better than company that violates your peace from within. The third virtue is justice. Walking away isn't revenge. It isn't punishment. It's respecting yourself without disrespecting the other. It's leaving without needing the other person to admit you were right. It's letting go without hoping they suffer from your absence. It's acting with fairness even when the world treats you with disregard. And finally, temperance, self-control. The ability to walk away without turning it into a performance. No dramatic final words, no slamming doors, no theatrical goodbyes. The Stoic leaves with sobriety. No applause. No audience. Just the calm awareness of someone acting out of alignment, not out of impulse. These 4 virtues don't just support your decision to walk away. They elevate it into a living philosophy. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, others are not." That simple sentence is one of the most powerful tools of the Stoic mind, especially when it comes to knowing when to walk away. Because there's an invisible line many of us cross every day. We try to change people. We try to change environments. We try to force respect where only ego exists. We try to heal others while slowly falling apart. And we call that strength. But often, it's just ego dressed up as perseverance. The dichotomy of control forces us to pause and ask, is this up to me? If it is, act with courage, presence, truth. But if it isn't, then it's time to let go. Time to stop forcing. To accept that some people won't change. Some spaces won't become healthy. Some paths aren't yours, no matter how hard you try. And here's the secret. Letting go isn't failure. It's clarity. It's realizing that holding on to what you can't control is the fastest road to emotional exhaustion. You don't have to endure everything. You don't have to save everyone. You don't have to stay where your peace is being traded for scraps of acceptance. Sometimes, true maturity is realizing your role in that space is already over. And walking away with lightness is the deepest form of self-respect. Not every connection is meant to last. Not every person is meant to stay. And not every bond needs to continue to have been meaningful. The Stoic calls this Amor Fati, the love of fate. Not a fantasized, idealized fate full of wins and perfect encounters, but the real kind, full of endings, distance, silent goodbyes, and closed cycles. To love your fate is to love the endings too. To look at a friendship that faded, a relationship that changed, a space that no longer welcomes you, and say, this too is part of my path. Many people suffer trying to keep what's already gone. They hold on, insist, dramatize. But the Stoic learns not to turn loss into identity, nor absence into chronic pain. They turn what was into wisdom, and what's gone, into fuel. Because every ending creates space, for solitude, for reflection, for reconnecting with who you are when no one else defines you. Marcus Aurelius faced grief. He lost children, friends, soldiers. And yet he wrote, accept whatever fate brings even when it feels harsh. Because what comes to you, came for you. That is Amor Fati. It's accepting the end with both feet in the present. It's not cursing what left, but being grateful for what stayed. The wisdom, the strength, the inner space you only gained because you knew how to let go. There are moments when staying is no longer loyalty. It's captivity. You feel it when you have to lie about how you feel just to keep the peace. When you start staying quiet so you don't upset anyone. When every encounter with that person, that group, that environment, drains you more than it nourishes you. The Stoic learns to recognize the turning point. That quiet moment when staying stops being a noble choice and starts becoming a threat to your virtue. Imagine Epictetus, still a slave, enduring abuse. He couldn't walk away physically, but he withdrew internally. He refused to hand over his peace to someone else's control. Later, as a free man, he distanced himself from social vanity. He chose simplicity because he knew environments that attack your integrity slowly shape you into someone you're not. Now think about destructive cycles. Relationships built on emotional manipulation. Jobs where your worth is always tied to performance. Groups that only accept you if you leave parts of yourself outside. Staying there means living in conflict with your conscience. And that comes at a cost. Stoic philosophy teaches that virtue is the most valuable good. More than status, company, or stability. And when a place demands that you sacrifice your virtue to remain, you no longer belong there. At that point, walking away is no longer a choice. It becomes a duty. A duty not to others, but to your own soul. Not every departure needs to be loud. Not every exit needs a final speech. Most people think that when they leave a situation or relationship, they have to justify it, explain it, almost as if apologizing for choosing their own peace. But the Stoic knows. The most powerful exit is the one made in silence. Silence not as a form of contempt, but as a sign of strength. A sign that you're not leaving out of impulse or to prove a point. You're leaving because you've realized that this is no longer your place. There's no need to leave in a fight or vanish in drama. You can step away with kindness, but with firmness. You can simply say, I need some time, or not come back at all. And if someone asks for an explanation, you owe nothing beyond the essential truth. I'm choosing what's good for me. No guilt, no war, no desire for the other to suffer your absence. After all, when walking away comes from clarity, it doesn't need a show. It's like quietly closing a door so no one wakes, not even your own pride. The Stoic doesn't need to shout to be heard. Their exit is quiet, and for that very reason, unforgettable. There's something sacred in the presence of someone who knows how to leave with dignity, and something deeply freeing in realizing that you no longer need to explain your peace. Walking away doesn't begin with your feet. It begins in the mind. Before physically leaving a place or relationship, the Stoic learns to retreat internally, in silence, in reflection, in practice. The first tool is Stoic journaling, writing to yourself. On the page, you put the truths you're afraid to say out loud. Why do I want to walk away? What am I feeling by staying? What am I losing by holding on? Writing every day, even if just for 5 minutes, brings clarity to what once felt like noise. And the clearer your vision becomes, the lighter your steps feel when it's time to go. The second practice is negative visualization. The Stoics called it premeditation of adversity. But here, the adversity is staying where you already know you don't belong. Close your eyes and imagine. If I stay in this relationship, where will I be a year from now? If I don't leave this environment, what kind of person will I become? This practice isn't meant to feed fear. It's meant to strengthen resolve. It's the antidote to self-deception. And finally, the most powerful Stoic reminder, memento mori. Remember death. You won't be here forever. Your time is your most valuable asset. Every minute spent in places that drain you is one less minute with who you truly are. Remembering the end makes us more selective. It teaches us that holding on to what wears us down isn't noble, it's a waste. These practices aren't complex rituals. They're anchors, so that when the time comes to walk away, you're not running. You're choosing with full awareness the path of your integrity. Today, everything pushes us toward constant presence. Reply, show up, post, comment, justify. We live in an age where being available feels like an obligation, and silence almost a crime. But the modern Stoic understands. Exposure without purpose is noise, and noise when constant poisons. Walking away today is an act of resistance, not just from people or physical places, but from digital overload. It's resisting the urge to join every argument, to reply to every provocation, to explain yourself at every misunderstanding. Wisdom is knowing that you don't need to be visible to matter. You don't need to argue to be right. You don't need to justify yourself to preserve your peace. Imagine Marcus Aurelius with a feed full of endless notifications. Do you think he would reply to every hateful comment? Or waste energy explaining his philosophy to those who don't want to understand? Of course not. He would write for himself, just like he did in Meditations, and let time reveal the truth of his actions. Strength today lies in conscious absence, in the deliberate choice not to react, to leave the group chat, to silence the messages, to prioritize real presence instead of digital performance. Stepping away in the age of exposure isn't disappearing. It's reappearing for yourself, in your rhythm, in your time, in your essence. Seneca, even as an advisor to a volatile emperor, knew when to stay silent. He endured intense political pressure for years. But when he saw that his presence was being used against his principles, he stepped away. He was called a coward by many. But he knew staying would mean betraying his philosophy. He stepped back and wrote his most profound works. Far from power but close to himself, Epictetus was born a slave. And when he gained freedom, he didn't rush to the center of the world. He opened a small school, simple, quiet. He taught philosophy not through loud speeches but through calm example. He knew that the greatest strength is often transmitted in silence. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, surrounded by flatterers, traitors, and ambitious advisors. But he didn't retaliate with anger. He stepped away, in thought. He found refuge in his writing, used reflection as a shield. And his greatness wasn't in dominating others, but in not letting the world dominate him. Today we still see this. Artists who leave the stage to avoid losing themselves in fame. Entrepreneurs who step away from external success to rebuild their mental health. Everyday people who close painful cycles just to breathe again. Stoicism teaches us that true courage isn't in enduring everything, but in knowing what's no longer worth enduring. And those who knew when to walk away are remembered for what they preserved, themselves. Staying where you no longer belong comes at a cost. And that cost doesn't always show up right away. Sometimes it appears as constant exhaustion. Other times as aches no doctor can explain. As anxiety attacks that seem to come out of nowhere. Or as a quiet feeling that something inside you is slowly fading. When you remain in places that rob your peace, in relationships that require you to betray yourself a little more each day, when you stay out of attachment, fear, or comfort, your body feels it, your mind gets heavy, your soul goes quiet. What you call resilience becomes resistance to your own truth. And often the most toxic thing isn't what someone else does, but what you allow to continue. That's why the Stoic doesn't romanticize staying. He observes, he reflects, and if necessary he lets go, without hate, without guilt, with respect, and with freedom. Because when you let go of what makes you sick, you make room for what heals you. And sometimes that healing begins with a simple gesture, turning around and walking away. There is a kind of freedom that doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't show up in speeches. It doesn't seek applause. It happens quietly within someone who one day realizes something both simple and deep. I don't need to stay here anymore. I don't need to stay in conversations that diminish me, in spaces that silence me, in relationships that make me feel invisible. Not out of pride, but out of clarity, out of integrity. True power isn't in taking up space. It's in having the calm to leave it when it no longer aligns with who you are. The most elegant kind of victory is walking away in peace, without justifying, without needing to prove you were right, just with a clear mind and a light heart. Those who learn to leave, learn to protect themselves, and those who protect themselves always come back stronger. Now that you've read this far, here's the real question. What is that one thing you know deep down you need to walk away from? Maybe it's a routine that drains you, a relationship that no longer reflects who you are, or even a thought that holds you prisoner every day. Stoicism doesn't invite you to escape. It invites you to clarity, to the courage to choose what strengthens your mind, your peace, your essence. Maybe your wisest move right now isn't to push forward. It's to pause, to pull back, to step away, to not respond. Today, you don't need to make a dramatic exit, but you can take a step, a gesture of self-care, a small but liberating decision. Because a true Stoic doesn't live by impulse. He lives by purpose. And when that purpose calls for silence, space, or detachment, he listens, with strength, with grace, and with the freedom of someone who's learned that being at peace is worth more than just being present.